Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a massive paradigm shift in modern football, and we'll break it all down logically. If you've been watching the elite tiers of the sport recently, you've probably noticed that the geometry of the pitch looks, well, entirely different than it did just 5 or 10 years ago. We are witnessing a fundamental rewriting of tactical law, and it's all centered around one specific position. So, here is the million-dollar question. Why on earth are the world's best defenders suddenly abandoning their posts? For decades, the rule was literally set in stone. If you're a fullback, you own the touchline. You stay wide. But suddenly, we're seeing elite, world-class defenders just willingly leaving that wide space to drift right into the absolute chaos of the center of the pitch. I mean, it feels completely counterintuitive, right? Why leave your defensive flank wide open?
Let's get into Section 1, the modern fullback revolution.
Now, you might be thinking this is just some experimental tactic from a rogue manager, but it's not. Just look at the pedigree of the teams adopting the system. You've got Manchester City's dominant run using Kyle Walker and João Cancelo, current Liverpool with Trent Alexander-Arnold, Arsenal deploying Bukayo Saka in inverted roles or pushing Ben White forward, and even super forward-thinking clubs like Brighton utilizing multiple inversion strategies. Honestly, to compete at the absolute pinnacle of world football right now, this tactical framework is practically mandatory.
So, what exactly are we talking about here? Let's pin down a working definition. An inverted fullback is a defender who starts in their traditional wide position, but the moment their team gains possession, they move inboard. They essentially become a pseudo-midfielder. Their job isn't to hug the touchline anymore, it's to create a central numerical overload. They're literally bringing ball-playing ability right into the core of the midfield.
Moving on to Section 2, traditional versus inverted roles.
Notice the stark contrast here between the two. On the left, you have the traditional fullback. They're defending on the wing, providing width in the attack, and grinding through those grueling one-on-one battles against the opposing winger. But on the right, the inverted fullback is a completely different beast. They move centrally to create a 3 versus 2 overload in the midfield, operating as a pivot to switch play to the opposite fullback who usually remains wide. It's a total reinvention of the job description.
And because of that massive shift, the actual player profile has to change. Teams no longer just need athletic fullbacks. They need ball-playing fullbacks. Stepping into the center of the pitch is kind of like stepping into a phone booth. The space is incredibly tight. These players must pass flawlessly, receive under immense pressure, and seamlessly dribble out of trouble. Plus, they need the supreme tactical intelligence to know exactly when to invert and when to stay wide.
That brings us to Section 3, the Manchester City Blueprint.
Let's actually walk through this brilliant tactical shapeshift step by step. Step 1. City lines up on paper in a standard 4-3-3 formation, but the absolute second they get the ball, Step 2 happens. The fullbacks, specifically Kyle Walker from the right and João Cancelo from the left, invert. They literally leave the defensive line and push right up into the central midfield. This leads us directly to Step 3, a massive formation shift into a 3-2-5 attacking shape. Suddenly, they're operating with a back 3 and a terrifying front line of 5 attacking players in possession.
So just put yourself in the shoes of the defending manager for a second. You set up to defend a 4-3-3, and suddenly there's a 3-2-5 bearing down on you. What in the world happens to the opposition's defense in this scenario?
Well, the answer is isolation. Specifically, the opponent's center backs are completely isolated because City now has 5 attacking players stretched all the way across the front line. The defending center backs are pinned back and stretched incredibly thin. They have absolutely zero cover, leaving them incredibly vulnerable to direct attacks.
Let's break down the numbers in Section 4, the devastating midfield math.
5 versus 3. You see, the absolutely crucial point here is this sheer mathematical dominance. By moving Walker and Cancelo into the central midfield alongside their existing 3 midfielders, City suddenly has 5 players in the center of the pitch. Think about that. Most opponents are only playing with a 3-man midfield. And guess what? 5 beats 3 every single time. It basically guarantees that the team with the inverted fullbacks will almost always have a free man to receive a pass, allowing them to completely monopolize possession.
This creates an absolute nightmare of a dilemma for the opposition. Option A, you step up and press that inverted fullback, but that pulls you out of position and opens massive gaps behind you for the opponent's natural attacking midfielders to exploit. Or there's option B, you stay compact, hold your ground, and give a technically gifted inverting fullback all the time in the world to pick a devastating pass from deep. It is quite literally a lose-lose situation for the defense.
We actually saw this exact dilemma play out during the brutal 2023 clash where Manchester City dismantled Arsenal 4-0. Kyle Walker inverted constantly from the right. João Cancelo occupied those crucial central midfield spaces from the left. And Arsenal's highly rated midfield was simply overpowered by the math problem. They just couldn't control the numerical disadvantages, and they were completely overrun.
So, is there a fix? Let's look at Section 5, how to counter it.
Right now, managers are deploying 3 main counter strategies to try and stop this. First, direct pressing on the inverted fullback. The goal here is to swarm them the absolute second they step into the midfield and force a turnover before they get comfortable. Second, teams are deploying incredibly narrow formations. They're packing the center of the pitch with bodies to essentially clog up the passing lanes and limit the space the inverted fullback has to operate. And third, which is perhaps the most dangerous, lightning-quick transitions.
Because here's the Achilles heel of the entire system, exploiting the abandoned touchline. Remember, that fullback started wide. By inverting, they leave a massive empty tract of grass out on the wing. If the defending team wins the ball back and launches a rapid transition into that space before the fullback has time to recover, they can completely expose the opponent's backline.
Which leaves us with this final thought to consider. Is the inverted fullback the final evolution of modern football? Have we actually reached the absolute peak of positional play where the lines between defender and midfielder are forever blurred? Or is this just another cyclical trend waiting to be completely solved and countered by the next generation of tactical masterminds? Keep an eye on those wide areas during your next match, watch where those defenders drift, and see if you can spot the midfield math playing out right in front of you. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.